Well, welcome to this live episode of the Special Education Inner Circle podcast. I'm your host, Catherine Witcher, and I just got done teaching a live IEP workshop, virtual, for 3 hours. It was so good, so many questions. I love working with parents, professionals who want to dig into IEPs at a whole other level. So if you are a school, an organization, a parent group that needs an IEP workshop, just reach out. Let's see what we can do. I would love to help you dig deep into IEPs. So let's get started here today by sharing a little bit of one of the hot topics that we just talked about during this workshop that I did this morning. And we were talking about different ways to improve the IEP beyond just like writing better IEP goals. That's not where the focus is at. It's really about making sure that the child is having an experience at school that's preparing them for further education, employment, and independent living, that we're really prioritizing what is happening at school. And the group that I was speaking to today was majority parents. There were a couple of professionals in the room. But one of the questions that I always get when I have a room full of parents is, can I go see my child at school? And I'm like, yes, of course you can. And then somebody else said, I think my child's doing well. Should I go see my child at school? Yes, you should. So here's 3 things to look for when you go see your child at school. Now, I just want to make it clear that you going to see your child at school is not so you can go catch anybody doing anything wrong at school. This is really so you can be an equal member of the IEP team and help make decisions that make sense for preparing your child for further education, employment, independent living. It's like if you don't know what you don't know, right? So you got to go seek some more information. So 3 things to look for when you go and observe your child at school. Number 1, inclusion. And I don't mean inclusion as in, is your child who has an IEP sitting with children who don't have IEPs? No, I'm talking about, is it evident that your child is included in the school community, no matter where they receive their direct instruction? So maybe they get some instruction in the general education classroom, maybe they get instruction in the special education classroom, whatever that looks like. Do they look like part of the school community? I'm looking for inclusive experiences. I say this all the time. Inclusion is not a place. Inclusion is an experience. We experience being included, and we can do that in all different areas of the school. And you will know as a parent if your child feels included or if they don't feel like they're part of the school community just by going to observe them. Now, don't get angry if you see things that you're just like, like why is this happening? Like my child's not part of, this part of the school or these activities, and they could be. That's an opportunity for you to design more inclusive experiences with the team during the school day. So during the observation, you're going to look for inclusion. The second thing that I want you to look for is prompting, the level of prompting that your child's receiving throughout the day. See, we want your child to be as independent as possible. And a lot of times what we see is a lot of adult prompting throughout the day, sometimes even in areas where your child may actually need less help. They could be more independent, but because maybe they needed more prompting in the beginning of the school year, and now they don't need as much, but nobody really backed off of it. Nobody really faded those prompts. Or maybe your child's being prompted to do things that they could do by themselves, but they kind of have their staff kind of snookered into like, oh, I need help doing this. And you're like, seriously? I know that my child can do that. I know that they can do that on their own at home, and they're getting all this help from the school staff. So that's an opportunity. Or maybe you're seeing an area where your child's struggling, like, oh, with a little bit of help, they could actually do that. So you want to be looking at prompting and the supports and how they're being implemented and what's happening there. So the third thing that I want you to do when you go and you observe at schools, I want you to be curious. I want you to be ready to ask questions. I want you to be asking things about like, well, how does the school facilitate friendships at recess? Oh, and you're like, the school's going to, I don't know. Maybe they don't. Maybe it's just a free for all. Or maybe some schools, they have things like buddy systems, and they have buddy benches, and they have different things that happen that you didn't even know were happening at school. So I want you to get curious about some of the supports that are at the school or some of the things that happen at school. I want you to get curious kind of outside of this IEP lens. Like, get curious. You're going to see things on the wall at school where maybe they have like core values at the school. And you didn't even know that these core values existed, but they're being taught to all the students about the core values. And you didn't know that. So I want you to get curious about the school environment itself and what your school is doing for all the students. And then make sure that your child is included in those practices or in those conversations that are happening throughout the school. So going to do an observation does not always have to be something like, I'm going to go observe my child in the classroom because my child is experiencing, is showing aggression in the classroom. So I need to go troubleshoot and problem solve. Observations don't always have to be for negative situations. Being an equal member of the IEP team means that you can go in and go look at things of what are these inclusive experiences? Is my child part of this school community? Or what's their level of independence, and looking at the prompting and seeing what's going on, or getting curious about what's going on in the school body as a whole and what might be available that you had no idea was actually happening at school, because we're always talking about IEPs all the time. And teachers, I want you to encourage the parents of your students to come get curious about these things, to come see what's happening, because they can be some of the best problem solvers, and they can be your best supporter for what you need as a teacher to help their child succeed on that school campus, in that school building, out on the playground, all the different things. You guys can truly be a team, but to be a team, you have to have equal information. To have equal information, that means that the parent needs to see what's happening during the school day. So I'm going to encourage you, go see what's happening at your child's school during that day. Keep these 3 points in mind as you go do that. Teachers, encourage the parents, and I hope to see you guys maybe in person at an IEP workshop, maybe virtual like I just did for an IEP workshop, or maybe I'll even see you inside of the Master IEP Coach Mentorship. That's where I train you to do what I do and help families and teachers and schools through the IEP process. So that's at masteriepcoach.com. Don't forget, if you found any of this helpful, if you're like, that's a great tip, I should go see my child at school, and I'm going to definitely look at their independence level, and I'm definitely going to look at their inclusive experiences, please leave a comment. Or if you're listening on Apple, make sure that you leave a 5-star review. Every time you leave a comment or you leave a review, it helps more parents and teachers get these IEP strategies that are much needed to make sure that every child's receiving an appropriate education, meeting their unique needs, and preparing every child for further education, employment, and independent living. I'll talk to you guys soon.